In this video, I want to demonstrate how to create an assembly of a cylindrical feature and a conical feature using these dimensions in this sketch. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my units are correct. In this case, I want to have inch units, and I'm going to turn on the visibility of the origin. So I always use the origin for reference to locate my geometry. I'm going to start a new sketch on the XZ plane, so the Z is pointing up, and I'm going to then draw a rectangle from the origin. I'm going to go down and to the right, and I'm going to change these two lines of construction then. So I'll do a crossing window, and I'll select those two lines, and I'll hit S, press X on the keyboard. That changes those two construction lines. I want to change this to a center line, so I'll right click on that and I'll change that to a center line. Notice you can also toggle between normal and construction by right clicking. Okay, so I have a center line here, construction line, and object line. Let's turn off the visibility of those planes. Maybe we can see better. I'm going to dimension. Now I want a diametral dimension with the diameter symbol. So I'm going to pick the center line, not the end point. I'm going to pick the center line and then this line or this point, either one. And I'm going to put in 0.9 as my dimension, and that gives me a diametral dimension. I'm then going to dimension the height of that, and I'm going to dimension it over here. I'll dimension that as 1.1. Let me undo that a couple of steps. Notice that I had blue geometry and then this brownish geometry for my construction lines. That means that it's not fully constrained. So once I add the dimensions, we see that turns black. And I add the next dimension, and then we see these lines turn black. So that lets me know that it's fully constrained. And also over here in the browser, it puts a lock symbol letting me know that that dimension is fully constrained. I'm then going to draw a line, and I'm going to draw it horizontally from this point over here. And that symbol right there tells me it's going to do perpendicular constraint. Maybe if I scrub this line, well, sometimes it will do a collinear constraint. I'll come on down, and I want this perpendicular, so I'll come down, and I'll try scrubbing this time and see if I can see that tracking line. I'll come over, and then I'll come back, and I'll put in this dimension of 0.9. So I'll dimension actually 0.05. I'll dimension from here to here as 0.05. And I'm going to revolve this then to get the cylinder. Now let me finish sketch, and I'm going to right click up here, and I should have done this to the beginning, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to create a component, and I'm going to call this component cylinder. If I could spell cylinder. And then I'm going to right click up here again, and I'll create a new component. And so if we have an assembly, it makes sense that our assembly has multiple components. And so I'm going to call this one cone, and we can create our components at any time. Now right now, this radio button indicates that the cone is my active component. I want to make the cylinder my active component. And then I'm going to do revolve. I'm going to select inside this rectangle, and it finds the center line automatically, and it revolves that cone or that cylinder around the center line. So we see that we have that cylinder with a hole going through it. Notice also that there is an anchor symbol here. If I right click and I see that the anchor symbol means that that is grounded. I'm going to go back to the top level here, and I'm going to, so I made this, the assembly, the top level of the assembly active. I'm going to edit the sketch again. I'll go to the front view where I'm looking directly at this. And so I've done the cylindrical part. Now I'm going to do the conical part. So I'm going to create a line, and I'm going to put this out in space first. I'm going to create a line horizontal. I'm going to come up at an angle. I'm going to come straight down, and I need to put some dimensions on here. So let's drag this over here a little bit and make it more or less to the size that we want. And I'm going to draw a line from here down to here. Now I want these two lines right here. We can drag these and see the behavior of those lines. I want this line and this line to be parallel to each other. So I'll put a parallel constraint between this one and this one. And then I'm going to put a dimension on here between this line and this line. And I want to put in the 0.05. If I want it to just always be equal to this one, I can just click on that dimension. It puts the variable name in for that dimension, and I'll press enter. So this is 0.05. The fx means it's a function of this dimension. So if I change this dimension, this one will automatically update. I'm then going to dimension from here up to here, and I'm going to put in the 0.97 dimension. Okay, so that gives me this height. And then I'm going to put a line in here for a center line, and I'll come over horizontally. So I'm going to put this center line in. I'll change that to center line. And I want this one to be a construction line. I'll change that to construction. And then I'll do a coincident between this point right here and this point right here. I'll then do a coincident between this point right here and this point right here. I'll then put in this dimension. So I'll do dimension. I want this as a diametral dimension, so I'll pick the center line, not this point. I'll pick the center line. I'll select this point, and that'll give me a diametral dimension, do 0.26. Everything turns black. It's all fully constrained. All right, I'll finish my sketch. And now when I finish the sketch, it becomes invisible because it was consumed by the cylinder. So I'll click here on that eye symbol to make that sketch visible again so that we can see it. And then I want to make sure, now this is the tricky part, is you always have to make sure that you have the correct component active. So I'm going to click down here to make the cone active, and I'll do revolve, and I'm going to select inside here. And if it doesn't get it, I try to select the cone, the area in there, it's not selecting it. And I see over here that this is actually on axis. So let's pay attention to this, and we'll just start this over again. So I'm going to do a revolve. It asks me to select a profile. I'll select inside here, and then pay attention to this. I'll select axis, and then I'll click the axis. And there we see that time we got it. This will be a new body, and it'll be in the cone component. I'll then go back to the top level. So I'll go to the assembly. And I had this image that I use as reference. I'll turn off the visibility of that image. So here is our cylinder. Here is our cone. If I drag this cone, we see that it moves any place in space. I'll hide that sketch. If I try to drag the cylinder, though, it is anchored in place, so it doesn't move. So I want to assemble this cone to this cylinder. And let's rotate around a little bit in 3D. Maybe we can see this better in 3D. So I'm going to go to Assemble, and I'm going to do Joint. And I'm going to go to the Motion tab, and I'm going to set our motion as a revolute joint. Now we maybe could do a rigid, but in this case I'm going to do a revolute joint. And then I'll go back to the Position tab, and I'm going to select this circle on top of the cylinder. Notice it's finding the center of that circle as my axis of revolution. I'll select this circle. Notice it's finding the center of that circle as the axis of revolution. Now it moved this part because of the order I selected those up to here, but that is an anchored part. So as soon as I say OK, it's going to move that back to the original position. Now if I drag this, it's not real apparent to see, but if I drag this, this still has 1 degree of freedom, a revolution degree of freedom, unless I put a rigid constraint on there.